Chief Justice Mogoeng Mogoeng was invited to an online seminar that was hosted by the Jerusalem Post. At that seminar, he was asked about his love for the Jewish people as well as for Israel. Here were his comments.
First base I give is in Psalm 122 verse 6, which says, 122 verse 6, which says, pray for the peace of Jerusalem. They shall prosper that love thee. And 3, also Genesis 12 verses 1 to 3, that says to me as a Christian, that if I curse Abraham and Israel, God, the Almighty God, will curse me too. So I'm under an obligation as a Christian to love Israel, to pray for the peace of Jerusalem, which actually means the peace of Israel. And I cannot, as a Christian, do anything other than love and pray for Israel, because I know hatred for Israel by me and for my nation can only attract unprecedented curses upon our nation. So what do I think should happen? I think, as a citizen of this great country, that we are denying ourselves a wonderful opportunity of being game changers in the Israeli-Palestinian situation. We know what it means to be at loggerheads, to be a nation at war with itself. And therefore, the forgiveness that was demonstrated, the understanding, the big heart that was displayed by President Nelson Mandela, and we, the people of South Africa, following his leadership, is an asset that we must use around the world to bring about peace where there is no peace, to mediate effectively based on our rich experience. Let me cite another example, for instance, in regard to the Israeli-South African situation. Remember, the overwhelming majority of South Africans of African descent are landless. They don't have land. Why? Because the colonialists came and took away the land that belonged to them. The colonialists came and took the wealth that belongs to them. And that has never stopped. The first thing.
Now, that was Chief Justice Mogoeng Mogoeng during an online seminar hosted by the Jerusalem Post on the 23rd of June last year. Now, he has been ordered to apologize and retract the comments that he made, the pro-Israel comments. For a reaction on this, I'm joined by Roshan Dadoo, who's convener of the SA for Boycott, Divestment and Sanctions Coalition, as well as Zikhona Ndlebe, Research and Advocacy Officer at Judges Matter. Ladies, thank you very much to the both of you for your time this afternoon. Let's start with you, Ms. Dadoo. The accusations against the Chief Justice, if you could outline the areas of contention and also perhaps name the parties that gave voice wanting the Chief Justice to retract the pro-Israeli comments as well as to apologize.
Thank you very much for having us on the program. Well, I'm speaking for the SABDS Coalition, and we lodged a complaint along with 2 other organizations. We represent 11 Palestine Solidarity organizations. And really, the main thing that we were objecting to was that the statement that the Chief Justice was not acting as an ordinary citizen, something that Judge Mojapelo has reiterated in his decision that came out yesterday, where he says that whether we like it or not, the Chief Justice is not like any other citizen of South Africa. He is the head of the judiciary and is subject to the restraints of that office. And we felt that he particularly breached the restraint of his office through causing a political controversy, entering into the political terrain, and doing so, in fact, on the eve of when our government was to introduce a debate in the United Nations Security Council in favor of Palestinian human rights and against the, at that time, proposed annexation of further Palestinian lands. So just on the eve of that, he intervenes in a political controversy against the restraints of his office. He does so in I mean, I must say the Jerusalem Post, it's an English language Israeli newspaper. The advert they put up ahead clearly marked the Chief Justice as the Chief Justice of South Africa. And these comments came out just before we were to make a bold statement in the Security Council. And I think we're very pleased that Justice Mojapelo agreed with us on this point, and that he has requested that the Chief Justice apologise.
Mr. Dadoo, I think it prudent and perhaps beneficial as well to clarify and to perhaps see what the understanding was. In your view, is a love for Israel an anti-Palestinian stance? Is praying for peace for Jerusalem equating to the subjugation of the people of Palestine?
First of all, I think the matter isn't about my opinion. It's about the fact that someone who holds one of the most senior positions in our country should be abiding by the restraints on his office and not intervening as the Chief Justice in political matters, particularly when he's contravening the foreign policy of our country, and as I say, on the eve of a very crucial debate in the United Nations Security Council.
Let me bring you in.
I think there are many Christians that hold views, and we would all like to see peace, of course, but I think, many of us feel that we need peace with justice. And in this regard, I'd like to mention Reverend Chikane, who he himself stands very firmly behind the struggle of the Palestinian people for peace and for justice in the region, and who this week has come under attack for his views on that matter.
So let me bring you in, Ms. Ndlebe, here in this regard. Mr. Dadoo spoke about peace with justice. The comments that were made by the Chief Justice, were those construed to be official comments made by him in his capacity as the Chief Justice? Because if you will remember in that statement, and let me quote this here, he said, so whatever I have to say should not be misunderstood as an attempt to say that the policy direction taken by my country in terms of their constitutional responsibilities is not binding on me. But just as a citizen, any citizen is entitled to criticize the laws and the policies of South Africa, or even suggest that changes are necessary, and that's where I come from, end quote.
So, Thami, I think to respond to your question, you need to start with the fact that the Chief Justice was invited in that webinar by the Jerusalem Post in his capacity as the Chief Justice of South Africa. He was not invited as an ordinary citizen, and even if he were invited as an ordinary citizen, you cannot say there is no separation between himself as an ordinary citizen and as a Chief Justice. So any comments that he made during that webinar, he made those comments, although he stated that they were not in his capacity as a Chief Justice, but he was invited there as the Chief Justice. So any comments that he made those comments as the Chief Justice. And then you must also note that judges, although everyone is entitled to freedom of speech and personal views, they are judges. They hold a very important office. And the Chief Justice holds a very important office. He's the head of the judiciary. He's the head of the Constitutional Court. And he is responsible to ensure that, obviously, the judiciary runs smoothly. But any comments that he makes cannot be separated from the fact that he holds the office of the Chief Justice.
Well, let's keep the both of you on the line, if I may, just for a moment, and we'll continue our conversation in just a moment. Do stay with us. This is your daytime update right here on Newsroom Africa, Channel 405. Our guests this afternoon, Ms. Roshan Dadoo, as well as Ms. Zikhona Ndlebe. Mr. Dadoo, let me pose this next question to you. The Judicial Conduct Committee found the Chief Justice guilty and ordered him to apologize unconditionally for becoming involved in political controversy through the utterances that he's made and that we just played. How should the Chief Justice have handled that matter at that particular time, given, as you say, that he was invited in his capacity as the Chief Justice?
Well, I mean, if I was the Chief Justice, I would not have participated in such a webinar. It was hosted, as I said, by English language Israeli pro-Zionist newspaper, and it was clearly designed to reflect those views, and it was obvious after having watched the event that he was invited there in order to express support for Israel. And as I say, it's a crucial time in which our government was making a statement the following day in the Security Council in support of Palestinians' rights to justice, human rights, and particularly at that point against proposed annexation of more of their territory.
Ms. Ndlebe, what impact does this ruling have on judges?
Well, let me first say that we are very surprised in a good way that this matter has been dealt with by the Judicial Service Commission expeditiously. And we are also very impressed by the fact that it was dealt with within 7 months, unlike the other matters that have been before the Judicial Service Commission. And of utmost importance is the fact that the head of the judiciary is all judges are to be held to account. And in this matter, the Chief Justice is to be held to account for the utterances that he made on the 23rd of June, 2020. So that means that I think this brings out the message that no one is above the law. Judges are not above the law, and they will also be held accountable given that the proper process in terms of lodging complaints to the Judicial Service Commission are followed, and so it does have a positive impact on the judiciary as a whole, which is bringing out the message that no one is above the law, and regardless of the position that you hold within the judiciary, you will be held accountable.
The Chief Justice has been asked to retract before, and he said that this is something that he will not do. He says he will neither retract nor will he withdraw. He says even if 50 people were to march and ask him to retract, that he would not retract. Now, if we highlight just some of the things that he spoke about praying for peace for Jerusalem, forgiveness as an asset, equated colonialism, which really talks to issues of politics, and equated that to the South African struggle as well. Which part of his utterances do you believe, as well as the coalitions believe, that he needs to retract and withdraw?
Well, I think he needs to apologise for breaching the restraints of his office, firstly. Secondly, I think we need to understand that Israel is an apartheid state. In fact, what he said about colonialism didn't quite make sense, because in this case Israel is a colonial power, and it's a colonial state over the colonized Palestinian people and their land. The fact that it's an apartheid state has been recognized by numerous UN bodies, international law experts, as well as most recently an Israeli human rights organization. So I don't think this is, controversial.
If I could, Mr. Dadoo, my understanding of that statement, and please do come in here as well. When I heard him speaking there, he was equating the role and the impact of forgiveness in South African politics. He was also talking about the role of perhaps the colonizers, as well as the freedom fighters, in dismantling apartheid and dismantling colonialism. So that was the context in which that came across, unless your understanding of that is different.
Well, I think my understanding of it is different, and I think when he was advocating that we should pray for Israel, and that anyone who doesn't pray for Israel, when Israel is the colonial power in the region, makes it quite clear. But I think the most important thing is that he apologized for having intervened in political terrain in contravention of the restrictions of his office. That would be for us the main thing, that we have raised the fact that this is not okay for someone who holds his office to go into webinars hosted by, in this case, a Zionist newspaper in Israel, and make pronouncements that contravene the policy, the foreign policy of our government, and at a very particular point when we were on the Security Council and about to raise a statement in support of the Palestinian people.
Mr. Dua, thank you very much for your time and your insights today, as well as Ms. Ndlebe, talking there in response to the judgment handed out against the Chief Justice. Chief Justice Mogoeng Mogoeng asked to retract and apologise. He's been given 10 days to do so. Ladies, thank you very much for your time this afternoon.